For those of you who are worried about that shadow that's kind of flickering back there, do not be alarmed, it's only my fan. I just didn't feel like turning it off. So lately I've actually been asked this question a lot. Steve, what's your favorite movie? Now most of you guys know that I'm a really huge film buff, and because of that, it's extremely difficult for me to answer that question. However, tonight I've decided to make a video of me listing 5 movies that I really enjoy. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's get started. So one movie that I've really enjoyed ever since I saw it for the first time when I was a kid is the movie that put Arnold Schwarzenegger on the map, The Terminator. Now, for those of you who have been living under a rock your entire lives and don't know the story behind The Terminator, here's what basically happens. In the future, there's a war going on between mankind and machines. The machines get this idea to send a killer cyborg back in time to kill the mother of the person who is the leader of the humans before that leader is born. To stop this from happening, the leader of the humans sends a man back in time to stop this cyborg from killing his mother in the past. And basically what ensues is a movie with almost non-stop action, an extremely good story, very well told, very well acted, very well made. This movie was only made for a few $1 million, but it looks like it was made for tens of millions of dollars more than it was. And there's always people comparing this movie to its sequel, T2 Judgment Day, and a lot of people think that Judgment Day is a better movie, but honestly I think this one is. There's no denying that T2 is better looking in the special effects department, but I think that Terminator 1 has a better story overall, so I'd have to say that this one is definitely my favorite of the two. Next we have the movie Good Will Hunting. Matt Damon plays a janitor who just so happens to be a super genius. However, he has very little direction in his life, basically no direction, but Robin Williams is a therapist who kind of sets out to find out which direction Will, the name of Matt Damon's character, should take with his life and basically helps him out. A lot of people say that this movie is really overrated, but I don't think it is. Yes, it has a very familiar plot where a therapist changes the life of somebody who's been abused his entire life, but at the same time, it's extremely well written and it's extremely well acted, especially by Robin Williams. Rest in peace, sir, Robin Williams. You are definitely missed. Robin Williams had an uncanny ability to play characters that were comical, but also play characters that were really dramatic characters. And he definitely shows that in this movie. It's one of the best performances of his career. So the next movie I'm going to mention is one that I probably should definitely give a synopsis of because not a lot of people that I know about it. And that movie is The Navigator, A Medieval Odyssey. This movie starts out in 1300s Europe when the Black Death was going on and a bunch of people were dying from the bubonic plague. In one particular village, this little kid starts having visions of himself and a lot of other people in the village going on a tunneling expedition, and this expedition eventually leading to the people in his village not being affected by the Black Death. So these villagers end up going on this tunneling expedition, but they somehow end up in the future. They end up in a really big city in New Zealand in 1988, which is when the movie was released. This movie has a really good story and it's really well told and pretty well acted by its cast. The interesting thing about it is it takes the idea of bringing medieval characters into a modern day setting, which is usually played for comedy, but in this case it's almost played completely straight. And it actually gives the movie a feeling that these people are actually on this medieval type quest. I'm not saying that everybody will enjoy this movie as much as I did, but I'd say it's definitely worth a look if you can find it. And I say if you can find it because it's fairly hard to find. So next we have the Japanese movie Battle Royale. A lot of people say that this movie is what inspired The Hunger Games. Now, I'm not sure if the person who wrote The Hunger Games actually saw this movie before she wrote the books, but similarities are definitely there. It takes place in the near future in Japan, and there's this group of students who think they're going on a field trip, but what actually happens is they end up being taken to a remote island where they're forced to kill each other until only one of them is left. This is one of those movies where the plot could have been taken in a direction that would have made the movie really bad, but it's made in such a really good way that it actually ends up being a really good and enjoyable movie. You actually really get involved in what's going on with the characters. That and this movie really moves like a lightning bolt. It's so fast-paced that it's not even funny. There is quite a bit of gore in the movie, and it's definitely very violent, but I think the movie is actually opposed to violence in the way it's presented. So if you can handle that kind of stuff, I'd definitely say it's worth a look. And last but not least, I know I said that these movies aren't all necessarily my favorite movies of all time, but this one probably is my favorite movie of all time as of right now. The movie City of God. It's really hard to summarize the entire story of this movie in a few sentences, but basically the plot behind this movie involves the crime that goes on in a slum outside of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, between the early 60s and the early 80s. We follow a lot of different characters in this movie, but the main one that we follow ends up getting interested in photography and hopefully trying to find a way out of this slum. It's hard to really pinpoint why this movie is so good. It's unbelievably well directed and well made, but it's also really well acted. But at the same time, I'm not really sure if you can really call it acting, because a lot of these people who were in the movie were people who lived in slums near where they were filming. But boy, these people sure can act well. The guy who plays the character of Little Z, who is basically one of the main crime lords in the movie, actually has this look to his face, and this voice actually, that makes it seem like he's that type of guy who would break your neck if you said just the slightest thing that he didn't like. If you can stand watching foreign films, or even if you usually don't watch foreign films, this is one of the best crime movies that I've ever seen in my life. I definitely recommend checking it out. I'd put it up there with The Godfather. And that's a bold statement. Let's put it this way. I had heard good things about City of God before I watched it, and I knew that I'd probably kind of like it, but it exceeded my expectations so much that I was blown away. Well guys, that's a list of some of my top 5 favorite movies. So tell me guys, what are some of your favorite movies? Alright guys, that's all for today. Steve, out.